When I grow up, I want to be an NBA basketball player.
When I grow up, I want to be a famous soccer player.
When I grow up, I want to be a professional football player.
When I grow up, I want to be a professional cheerleader.
How many of us grew up wanting these exact same things, yet we find ourselves accepting less than we dreamed of as a child? Trauma, adversity, unfair circumstances, you name it. Totally understandable, yet, is it really? Here at I'm 1% Possible, we explore the unsung heroes, the everyday, unassuming individuals that you may have never heard of, but they all have one thing in common. When life struck them, they struck back. Today, I have a very interesting guest. His name is Barry Adkins, and he has overcome a unique trauma and adversity, but at the same time, then turned to help make an impact in others' lives similar to me so that we can help stop or educate on the issues at hand. So Barry, I appreciate you coming. And slight history, you are the father-in-law of my good friend Peter Wood.
I am. Thanks for having me on, Caleb.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So today Barry's going to be talking with us about the dangers of binge drinking. And unfortunately, he lost his son very young and how that impacted him. And then as my ultra endurance athletes understand, he took a nice long walk, about 1,400 miles, right?
Yep.
And I'm sure that you uncovered a lot of wisdom and truths along the way, similar to my Race Across America journey with my team. So I very much appreciate the healing power of doing something that seems to most rather stupid or impossible.
That's a fair way to describe it, Caleb.
So you're in good company here. Well, Barry, as always, I like to start out with a little bit of backstory. So tell us, what was it like to be a young Barry? Where were you born and raised?
It's pretty disappointing, Caleb. I grew up in Kalispell, Montana. I can only describe myself as an awful student. Didn't really have any direction in life. Barely got out of high school. The only class I did well in two classes in high school. One of them was typing, which has served me very well through the years, learning how to type well.
Something I could tell you the younger generation probably doesn't even know how to do.
Typewriters and 55 words a minute or whatever it was. And then I had another class. The only other class I got an A in was something called aerospace. So I went in to listen to the teacher's spiel on what to do. And he said, well, we're going to teach you all about, flying planes and all the process there and stuff. And he said, before I even got into class, he said, if you pass the private pilot written, you have an A in my class for the whole year. It was a 1 year long class.
Wow.
And you don't have to show up.
That's a motivation.
I passed the private pilot written in October.
Okay.
My dad, who didn't believe I was going to do that, said, well, if you pass the private pilot written, I will pay for your flight instruction for your high school graduation gift.
What an incentive.
I had my pilot's license by the time I got out of high school.
Wow.
So really, other than that, pretty unremarkable. Then, I wandered around. I wanted to become a pilot in the Air Force. They said I was too short. I just kind of wandered around. We lived in Alaska some. And I went back up to Alaska. My parents had moved up there. I got a job working on a commercial fishing boat in about 1977, fishing Prince William Sound before Exxon Valdez happened.
That's some hard work.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's what motivated me to go to school. I did that. Then I came back. So the guy called me a couple of years later and said, hey, I'm building a boat. Can you come and help me? And I'm, just a young, snotty-nosed kid. I think he probably only paid me room and board. Maybe he gave me a little bit of spending cash, but not much. And so I helped him build the boat. We took it up the Inside Passage to
Okay.
Alaska without GPS or any of the cool things you have today.
Wow.
I worked a second summer for him on Kodiak Island, where I discovered that it's a very dangerous business. There was a guy who died while I was out there, motivated me to go to school. I came down to Arizona and went to DeVry, um, which was a good school back then, by the way. It paid off for me anyway. Got married, had 3 kids, just living a middle class life.
And how old were you when you got married?
I got married in 83, I think it was. So I'd have been 25.
Okay.
And before that, I really wasn't interested in that. I didn't, I was a snotty nosed kid that really didn't have any direction. We had kids, got divorced in 93. I had custody of those kids.
Okay.
Uh, Married my wife now of 26 years on January 1st, 2000. And then I guess that brings us to the event
You
that
saw.
changed everything, right? Um, I remember him leaving the house that day. I gave him a hug, told him that I loved him and be careful, watched him drive away. It was
Now
the last
let's
time.
get a little bit of let's honor your son.
Okay.
Can you tell us a little bit of about him, his passions, his interests?
He was a lot like his old man. He was not a very good student.
Okay. No judgment.
He barely got out of high school, but he was into the FFA and raising pigs, riding mules, driving pickup trucks. But the one thing about Kevin that I always tell people is he had a really good heart. He actually befriended a boy named David in 3rd grade, and David was in a wheelchair.
Okay.
Makes it a little harder for him to make friends.
Yeah.
Kevin was that guy that made sure that David always got where he needed to get. And when he would come over to our house, those 2 boys would leave that wheelchair at the front door.
Oh, that's
And
awesome.
David would crawl around and follow Kevin around, but Kevin would get tired of waiting for David, so he just grabbed him by his arms and drug him around the house. I really wish I'd have taken some pictures.
I appreciate that. I think and you don't have to be physically disabled, but I've got a lot of friends that are, myself included, and I call us uniquely able because it usually just brings out a different talent that you probably already had but had never forced to grow.
Correct.
And usually that's mental toughness amongst everything else. So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
wow.
he was good. He was a good kid. It was, he would drag him in the backyard. His mom got to the point where she'd bring a change of clothes because she knew they were going in the backyard and that wheelchair wasn't with him. And he'd drag him all over the backyard and put him on the swing. And, just they had a lot of fun together.
That's beautiful.
And he was also one of those kids. It was a thing that they all did. If somebody's broke down on the road or the freeway, they'd stop and help them.
Wow.
They just, one of them told me one time, well, we always figured we're driving beat up vehicles. We're going to be that guy sitting beside the road someday. We're going to need some help. So they would always stop and help people.
As a father myself, I would also give credit to you. Clearly, you did something right to create that type of character, and so I appreciate that. And
Yeah,
sounds like we definitely lost a good soul. So I'm
did.
sorry for that.
We did. But the good Lord's got other plans. Certainly not the way I had my life scripted, Caleb. Like I said, I was a middle class guy, live in a middle class neighborhood, living a middle class life.
I respect that. Now, you said you had 3 kids, so where is Kevin at in that order?
He was the baby of the family. And when he wanted to move out, he started talking about how he couldn't believe his life was finally beginning and he wanted to move out. And I honestly tried to discourage him because we really never had any problems with him.
Okay.
His high school principal didn't even know who he was.
That's a good problem to have.
That's a good problem to have. Yeah.
Okay. So obviously we're going to get into binge drinking and also the loss and then how you journey through that. But I'm just curious again to give people some context. These are everyday problems, whether you are a teenager, whether you are a grown adult. I actually interviewed my therapist about 3 weeks ago. Come to find out, she's a recovering alcoholic, probably about 25, 30 years. I always knew she had something, some depth. We have a much different relationship than any therapist I've ever had. But would you potentially explain maybe some of the signs that you did or didn't see? It's not like at 18 he just decided this was going to happen. I'm sure this was unfortunately a pattern before.
I never, and I've been asked that question. It's a fair question, but maybe I lived kind of an oblivious life, but I didn't see anything that scared me. And, I often am asked, did you talk to him about drugs and alcohol? We talked about drugs a lot. But we have a close family member who was an alcoholic, and he knew a raging alcoholic. And he always talked about how stupid that guy was and how he was never going to let that happen to himself.
Okay.
So you believe, I tend to, I just tend to believe people at face value. If you tell me that, I believe
Well, and if the actions aren't showing you anything otherwise, I would agree. I'm the same way. Probably too trusting at times,
Yeah,
but I understand, and especially your kid, you want to trust them.
yeah.
So, okay. Well, if you want to walk us through the events of that fateful day and then what happened thereafter, I'm on bated breath. I'm very interested.
So he had talked about wanting to move out, and he was sitting in this brown chair talking about how he couldn't believe his life was finally beginning. I did my best to discourage him, didn't have any luck with that. A couple weeks later, his buddy Craig came over and they started the process of moving him out. He's 18 years old. They threw a bed, a TV, and a dresser in the back of his truck. That was his definition of moving out for the day.
Well, and he's a man, so we're simple creatures.
We're simple creatures. He came back in the bedroom, and his clothing system is pile of dirty clothes on the floor, pile of clean clothes right next to it. He grabs a pair of the clean jeans, throws them in the dryer to de-wrinkle, came in the living room and told me something I've never forgotten. He said he wasn't going to take his toothbrush with him. He'd be back tomorrow morning and grab it. He put on his jeans. I walked out front with him like I normally do, told him that I loved him and to be careful, and watched him drive away.
Okay.
It was the last time I saw him alive. That night, his friends decided to throw a little housewarming party. Started with beer, moved on to shots. He left a voicemail for his sister that night talking about how drunk he was and how he loved his nephew Colin more than anything in the whole world. Probably didn't sound like a big deal. No big deal, except somebody died that night. That somebody was my son, Kevin. He passed out. People at the party laid him in his bed on his side in case he vomited. Party's still going on, right? They went in and shaved his head and his legs while he was passed out because he's just passed out, right? It's a big
Right.
But his buddy Craig was worried about him, kept going back in to check on him. Around 4 a.m., calls started coming into 911. First calls were difficulty breathing. Next calls were not breathing. My son died alone in a hospital while I slept peacefully in my bed. Next morning is Sunday morning. My wife and I are sitting around drinking coffee, talking about what we're going to do or not do that day. At about 8:30 in the morning, the doorbell rings. And we're looking at each other because we weren't expecting company, right?
Right.
And I open the door and I see two police officers and somebody in plain clothes at the front door. Should have been a big red flag. It should have been, but it wasn't. I'm that
Okay.
guy. It didn't even occur to me that something bad had happened. One of the officers and the person in plain clothes stayed by the front door. The other officer walked in and stood in front of that brown chair that Kevin had sat in a couple weeks before, talking about how his life was finally beginning. He said there'd been an accident. Your son is dead. We have a number of children. We asked who. They said it was Kevin, and they handed me his driver's license. There's something pretty final about it when a police officer hands you your child's driver's license, because until that exact moment in time, you're holding out hope, man. You're
Right.
holding out
No,
hope.
it's got to be a mistake. Maybe
This
you
is-
got the wrong guy.
You got the wrong guy, you got the wrong house, you misspelled the last name, something. But when they hand you your child's driver's license, you know he's gone and he's never coming back.
And that's heavy.
Yeah, and it was an ugly time for me, Caleb. I was angry with God, and I told him so. And I probably the biggest rent I've ever gone on in my life was with God. I was pissed. Why didn't he take me, right? And as a parent, that's not an unusual thought, I don't think. Um,
And rightfully so.
right. And yeah, it was, I was just angry. And a couple days later, I had another life-changing event. This is difficult for me to describe. I'm going to do my best with it.
Okay.
I was laying in bed and I was wide awake and I felt like somebody just walked in the room behind me or something. You know that feeling like somebody just walked in.
Hair on the back of your head goes up just a
Yeah,
little bit.
exactly.
Yep.
And there was a light.
Okay.
A light I'd never seen before and haven't seen since. And there
So an
was
angel showed up.
Exactly. And the message was that Kevin didn't suffer and something very good would come from this. And I'm not here to tell you it made everything okay, because it didn't. But it gave me a mission.
Before we go on, how are you processing that?
At the time,
Yes.
I didn't tell anybody about it for quite a while
Fair enough.
because I'm an engineer by trade.
We like facts, right?
We like facts. We like very linear thinking. And I just didn't, it was hard to wrap my head around.
I'm curious. I'm a man of faith. I believe in God. I've had similar but different encounters. The question that I think is usually the first thing that people say, whether they believe or not. How do you know that was an angel or a positive spirit or good energy or whatever people associate that with?
For me, it was the light.
Okay.
Because it was a light that I can't describe. The closest thing is that, because I've thought about this a lot, the closest thing to that light is if you go outside and you close your eyes and you look at the sun. And there is a light that's everywhere, because that's what it was. It was everywhere. It wasn't just, just some little light above me. That's all I saw was this light.
And how did you feel when this happened?
Well, it changed the way I looked at everything, because one of the questions you always have is, did he suffer? That was something that was on my mind a lot. And that's the part of it that makes it so interesting, is that not only was it something very good will come from this, but that he didn't suffer. My sense of it was that it was Kevin telling me this. I don't know that because it's not, you don't hear a voice, right? Because there's no,
you feel it, but you hear it here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did what I'm curious, and I'll reference a peace that passes all understanding. Did you feel that?
You feel it. Yeah. Yeah. It's not a voice. You know what was said. You get that, but it's not like I heard a voice.
So, for the audience, I think that you said several important things there. Again, and you're the first person that I've really kind of gone this level of depth with a spiritual encounter. So I appreciate it. I think it's important to understand in your journey of life, whatever you believe, if it had been a demon or a negative spirit or whatever, people believe all kinds of stuff. I'm not here to tell you what to believe, just what I believe and what you believe. You wouldn't have experienced peace.
Yeah.
You were already mad.
Yeah. It was.
Did that anger dissipate?
Absolutely it did, because it gave me a mission. I didn't know what it meant, because my first question would have been, what do you mean something big? What do
Right.
you got in mind for me? Right? Give me some details. Like we go back to the end, okay, give me a list of things. And I thought that it meant things like writing a letter to the editor.
Okay.
Little things, not what it turned into. And because another thing for me is I have no idea why God chose me for this, because I never was a public speaker before this. I was a middle class guy in a middle class neighborhood, man.
Well, I can answer that question for you if you'll allow. I've said this before. God doesn't call the qualified, qualifies the call.
Yes.
I hear some Moses in there. God, I'm not a good speaker. Nobody knows who I am.
Yeah.
I think that's the point.
Yeah.
Because if you had this notoriety, and you did, usually, not always, but usually, people at that level lack authenticity because they can't always be true because they have to be what their brand represents, etc. So, yeah, I think that answers that question. Again, not just for you, but for people who feel, hey, I've had similar conversations, I've never told anybody. Normal, totally normal. How long did it take for you to tell your wife, hey, an angel just showed up at the house?
Yeah. She was laying in bed next to me, by the way, when this happened.
So she had no idea.
No, she had no idea. It took me a few days. I I did. I tried to explain it to a few people, and they just kind of gave me. I mean, Bev, my wife, she believed me that it happened. She just, she knows I'm not going to BS her about something like that.
Right.
But a few days later, when I spoke at his memorial, that was one of my focuses: is something very good will come from this. I don't know what it is. I still don't know what it is, Caleb. 20 plus years later, I don't know what it is. Still looking for it.
I understand that all too well. So here's what I found so far, Barry, and you've done, I'm far from your first interview and far from your last. But somebody's going to hear this when they need to, how they need to. And sometimes the good that comes from it is somebody hearing that encouragement. Or, hey, I can identify with this for myself or a loved one. And God, I've been told many times, speaking for personal experience, hey, this needs to change. And I refuse to hear it. This might be the angel going to somebody else
You
through the
know,
form of this.
You're absolutely right. And I don't know that it's for me to know.
No,
You
but I
know,
also
that's
understand the engineer's mind or the hey,
yeah.
you know, you poured 20 something years into this. I would like to see. Have you ever been told by through the walk or afterwards, hey, this helped me, this helped a family member, etc.?
I have. I have. Probably the coolest story. A little tough for me to tell, but I'll tell it. I spoke at a school up in Scottsdale, and I got a call. I guess I actually got an email a couple weeks later. There had been a party where there was somebody passed out. One of the kids that had heard Kevin's story wanted to call 911. The other students didn't because they didn't want to get in trouble. So the kid
Right.
that had heard the story put the person that was passed out in his car, drove to an urgent care facility, who called 911. They air evac'd him out and saved his life.
You know, I'm sure in some ways, one that felt reassuring, but I know I've told myself this many times and others. Hey man, if I just save one person, you know, I'll keep
We're
doing
good.
this, right? I'm good because I'm not doing this for me.
No.
But that one person has happened many times now,
Yeah.
and I think sometimes as a mission leader, if you will, sometimes you just need to be reminded of that because not only is it daunting, sometimes it's exhausting.
It is absolutely exhausting to get up there and bare your soul to a bunch of people. It is actually, it's kind of interesting you bring that up. It's actually physically exhausting to me. If I can, if I only do one, and when I get home, I'm going to take a nap. I'm going to take a 30-minute nap because I'm just that tired.
I think it's because everything is connected, but especially traumatic memories.
Yeah.
They affect literally your entire body.
Yeah.
And unless somebody's been through that, they don't necessarily understand it. But I I understand that too. That was going to be my next question. So
Yeah, it does. It's kind of interesting the way it, because you're right, it's a traumatic memory. And I was taught very early on in the process of telling the story that you need to go there. The young lady that taught me that, because I had done it for her, and she goes, that's good, but I want to be sitting in a room with you when you get that knock on the door.
I mean, I saw the chair, saw the leather chair.
When you
I
go to
saw the
pick up
cops.
his ashes,
Yeah.
walk me in the funeral home with you. Tell me what you see, what you hear. And that, again, it took me years to wrap my head around that. I am blessed to be married to a woman who was willing to critique me. And she would sit in the back. She doesn't go to as many now, but she would sit in the back and go, "No, you lost it with that dude. Drop kick that. Whatever that
Mm,
was, you need to change it or get rid of it."
amazing. It seems to me I found. Sounds like you have as well. The wisdom of our wives. We just have to drop the ego enough to listen.
Well, when you lose a child, your ego um, takes a pretty big hit.
I agree.
It's a pretty big shot. And then, then we got to go pick up his ashes. Let me tell you that
Okay.
part of it.
So let's walk through that.
So I go down to the funeral home, walk in the funeral home. They've got nice pictures on the wall, playing music in the background. They take me into an office, sit me down in a big, comfortable chair, the desk in front of me. And a funeral director walks in, sets an urn down in front of you, an urn that holds all the remains of the kid that you burped, changed his diapers. I coached baseball, basketball, soccer, football. I taught him to shoot a gun. and swing a golf club. All that remains of him were sitting in an urn in front of me. And there's one thing that I knew at that point, and that was I didn't want to be a victim. Because the world doesn't need any more victims. We've got plenty already. The world needs people who take something bad and they make something very good come from it. And for me, it's to get out and tell the story.
So how did you land from that mindset, which I very much appreciate and understand and agree with, to let's take a long walk?
Well, you know, we wrestle with what to do with his ashes. The idea to walk to Montana evolved, but it started. There's a movie out there called Lonesome Dove. It's an old movie, got Tommy Lee Jones, Robert Duvall in it. It's a Western. It's a long movie. It's probably 3.5 hours or something. You got to watch it over a couple nights. But that was one of Kevin's favorite movies. And I won't give away so people can watch the movie, but that's where the idea to walk there came from. And initially, I was just going to walk the Continental Divide. But I wanted to tell the story. And, you know, it evolved, right? Because it was initially, I'm just going to take off my backpack and you're going to meet me on this highway and I'll get some supplies and move on.
Right.
But I realized that, and again, it was a God thing, you know, kind of directing me in what we're going to do. It evolved into telling the story along the way. And it's a terrifying thought. I had a lot of people try to talk me out of it, Caleb. As you can imagine, a lot of well-meaning people tried to talk me out of it. And honestly, I think it's because they were afraid I was going to fail. And I don't blame them.
Isn't it funny, though, that when you do something that much bigger than yourself, because my story is very similar, that those who support, I call it the refiner's fire, but those who support through that, you know, you've got them for life. And then at the same time, the naysayers, if you will, quickly identify themselves. And I would imagine your circle very quickly became very small.
It did. And again, I don't blame them.
No,
I
but
ran it by a lot of people, but there is one line. A lot of people said a lot of different things, you know, do this, do that. And you get a lot of advice. But this one guy, I was talking to him about it. And, you know, do I do it? Do I not do it? And he said, how do you think you'd feel about it in 10 years if you don't do it? And for me, that sealed the deal. Like I physically, I was able to do it. I've been blessed enough to be able to handle that. Although obviously, as you well know, with anything like that, there's pain. There is physical pain associated with doing something like this.
yes. And I would argue to say sometimes that's what we're looking for, even though we don't want to admit it. Right.
Could be.
And again, just from my own experience, you need to overcome that pain. Sometimes it's actually emotional, feels physical, but for myself, I want to bring myself back to that point to prove I can overcome it instead of it overcoming me.
That's a fair way to describe it. I'd run a few marathons.
Okay.
For that. So I was familiar with the process. What I wasn't prepared for, and there was really no way to prepare for it, is the everyday grind.
Right.
Ingrown toenails, plantar fasciitis, blisters, sore knees.
Right.
Are you going to get up and do it again? We had actually planned for sick days and weather days in the schedule because we scheduled a whole bunch of speaking stuff. But I didn't have a single sick day or weather day. And it's not because there weren't days I didn't feel like going. But on those days, I thought, it might be worse tomorrow. I better go have at it today.
Now, how did you break this up? This is no small feat.
We broke it up. I averaged a little over 90 miles a week. I initially started walking. I only walked 5 days a week. I
Okay.
do 15, 20, 15, take a day off, 15, 20, take a day off. But I found that those days off were not very productive. They really weren't helping me recover. And someone had told me a long time ago that there's a big difference between going out and walking 20 miles and going out and walking 14 or 15. So I settled on 7 days a week, and I'd have to do the math again, but I think it was 13 or 14 miles a day, every day, regardless of what's going on. And then you settle into a routine, right? You're going to get up
Right.
every morning. One of my requirements for hotels was it had to have a bathtub.
Were you packing besides your son's ashes? Was this almost self-supported, or was your wife and kids with you, or
My one daughter walked part of it with me. My wife was there all the way. She met me about every 3 or 4 miles because it took me a little bit to figure out this isn't a race. I just need to get there.
Right.
I just need to get the miles in every day. So I actually have a book where she wrote down mile markers. She would go up 3 or 4 miles, find a place to pull off and meet me. I would take a break. I would grease up my blisters. I would stretch to the best of my ability and get up and do it. And it's a good metaphor for life because one of the questions that I get asked is, did you ever think about quitting?
okay, great question.
The answer to that is no.
Okay.
But I wasn't even out of Arizona before I started doubting. I was
Mm,
actually between Payson, Arizona and Flagstaff on a pretty good sized hill. It was raining. It was miserable. And I really started doubting if I was going to make it because I was only 150 miles into this thing and I wasn't feeling it, Caleb. Let's put it that way.
what do those doubts sound like or feel like? Because I understand.
They sound like, well, you've talked a good game here, dude.
Mm,
Now you got to back it up. And you're 150 miles into this and, you know, you're
uh,
not feeling it. But I changed the way I thought about it
uh,
because in my mind, I was thinking about 1,400 miles in three
uh,
more states. That's a bad plan.
I agree.
I thought about 3 more miles, take a break. I blocked out Idaho and Utah and Montana. I blocked those out of my mind. I blocked out the next town. I just thought about 3 more miles, take a break.
You know that's achievable.
Yeah. And it's a great metaphor for life, right? Because
I
you look
agree.
at something and think, man, I can't do that. But what can you do today?
Mm, very powerful. Very powerful. I'm just curious as an athlete, what shoes are you wearing? And were you carrying a rucksack or a backpack?
I had a backpack. I carried, I had some water in it, and I used Max at the time. That was the thing my trainer said that I should use. So I drank Max or
Uh,
Max, whatever it is. It had a regular backpack. The shoes, interesting. I swapped between. I had some Brooks the Beast,
huh?
and I had some version of Nike. And this plantar fasciitis that I had, along the way, it went away. And I thought it was because of all the great stretching I did. I got back years later. I had swapped out shoes and stopped wearing those and wearing other, kind of barefoot shoes, that kind of stuff. And the plantar
Right.
fasciitis came back. I still had a pair of those old Brooks the Beast. I put them on, and within a week, that plantar fasciitis was gone. So I'm a fan of that shoe for that.
Brooks, if you're listening, sponsor this man.
It's a very structured shoe. It's called the Beast for a reason. It's very structured, but it got rid of it.
That's incredible. Man,
Have you had plantar fasciitis ever?
oh, have I?
It's
Oh, it's
it's
debilitating.
painful, but it after you get going, it's okay. It's just that
Right.
first 10 or 15 steps where you just want to scream.
Yeah, and it feels like somebody's shooting nails up your foot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I had it and I found the same thing as you, depending upon the footwear. And there was some rehab involved, but it, amazing that it's usually more footwear or structure driven, and until something either releases or strengthens or whatever the case may be. So
I got a lot of, I had a trainer that was helping me. He did it for free. And I would go in and talk to him about that plantar fasciitis, and he'd have me lay on the table. And he says, okay, I'm going to work on your foot. And he hands me a pair of socks.
uh,
And he said, I said,
oh,
what do I do with the socks? And he
put
said,
it in your mouth.
put them in your mouth.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Did
like,
you
oh,
also
this
get
isn't good.
did you get the frozen cup with ice on the foot and the calf therapy?
They did all kinds. They worked it over. I screamed into those socks. I'm like, oh,
Uh-huh.
it's painful.
So let's walk through, how quick did it take before you start getting some revelations, if you will, through this walk?
Well, there's a lot of things that I began to understand, and the three things that I tell everybody. First one is about decision making.
Okay.
The two most important decisions you're ever going to make, apart from following Jesus, in my mind, are about drugs and alcohol. It isn't even close, guys. We all know stories. You need to educate yourself in whatever way that is about the dangers of drug and alcohol abuse, as if your life depends upon it.
Okay.
Because it does,
Now,
man.
is that one decision or is that two?
It's whatever those decisions about things that are addictive, that is just such a huge, and nobody ever plans on becoming an alcoholic or a drug addict.
Oh, of course not.
Nobody
We
ever
don't set
plans.
out for destructive behaviors to destroy ourselves.
But once you start down that path, and that's why I'm so big about prevention, because once you start down that path, the rehab industry, I Googled it, is somewhere around $35 billion a year.
Wow.
It's big and getting bigger. Prevention is
I'm
really where
curious
it's
your
at.
thoughts. I've
Yeah.
talked with my therapist about this, several friends. I actually think every human is an addict. It just depends on what you feed yourself.
Yeah.
For me, fitness, work, family, um, never touch drugs, barely, and I mean barely, touch alcohol, but never to the point of loss of control.
Right.
And my therapist, she said she agreed because it's all just brain chemistry. You know, if we take the stigma away from that word as addict, oh, you're an addict. Yeah, so are you.
Everybody's got their own thing, right?
Right. It just
I drink
what's
coffee
your
every single morning, man.
right. What's your vice? I have my Rain energy drink every morning.
Yeah.
Throw in a nicotine pouch.
Yeah.
That gets things moving. And then whatever my workout of the day is from my coach, I start with that, and then we go from there.
Yeah. I
But
mean,
all
we
those
all
things
have
are
those
generally viewed as, oh,
things.
this is healthy or positive. Doesn't mean I'm not addicted, because my wife would be the first one to tell you. She'd go, you haven't ridden your bike in a couple of days. You're really cranky.
Yeah.
Yes, dear. I'll stop
That
what I'm doing and get on.
exercise is such a big part of it too, because I've been a runner for quite a while, and the release that you get from going out and pushing yourself. I can't anymore because of my back, but I still walk probably 4 miles a day.
Okay.
But that
Only 8
release,
more to go. We're doing, oh, sorry.
yeah, yeah, exactly. I think about that all the time. But the release you get from doing that, it kind of gets all that frustration out, right? Go out and I tell everybody, I used to run when it's 120 out, I go run. And why do you do that? I said, because it is the most thought cleansing thing you can do. Because when you get 2 miles from the house and it's 110 degrees, there is only one thing, one single thing on your mind. Get
Finish.
me back to the house.
I agree. I actually would imagine, minus, I mean, I think talking is great. Faith is huge, but
Yeah.
fitness, I think, is the original therapy
Yeah.
because it's the only thing I've found that gets hormones moving.
Yeah. Yep. Get out and do something. Get your idle hand. I think what somebody used to say was idle hands are the devil's work. If you're feeling bad, go out and volunteer someplace.
Mm-hmm.
Go out and do something for somebody.
Shift your perspective.
That's because that's the thing is we get in there and we see social media and we think, well, our life is as good as these people. Forget it, man. Get out and do. If you volunteer, even the littlest things make you feel better. For me, I actually go move chairs at the church.
Okay.
I'm not a greeter. I'm not the dude that's going to stand at the door and greet you. I'm just not that. I'm not wired like that. But we got a couple hundred chairs to move. Let's go do it. And I can see what I did when I get done.
Right. I would agree. Okay, so that was number one,
Number one.
most important decision, maybe number two.
Number
Okay,
two, there's three of them.
Okay.
The second one you're vaguely familiar with is this term called adversity.
Mm,
It happens to everybody. Bad
Amen.
stuff happens to everybody.
Yep.
The way you respond to adversity defines your life. Notice I didn't say it might. It
Agree.
will. Pain is fertile ground for radical change.
Oh,
Don't
that's a
waste that
whole
pain.
word right there, Pastor. Come on now.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's there and it's an energy.
Pain is.
Fertile
Say that one
ground.
more time.
Pain is fertile ground for
fertile
radical
ground.
change.
For radical
Don't
change.
waste that pain.
Oh, I agree.
Because that's where you make changes. A lot of addicts that I've talked to, it was that pain. And eventually that pain,
Well, you have to become sick and tired of becoming sick and tired.
right. It's that pain. That's where it is.
I would caveat that. I 100% agree. But the pain will always be there. The opportunity to change is always there. You have to put in the effort to make the change. And that's the hard part.
Yep.
Because they'll go, well, I'm so far gone. What's the point in trying? Well, let's go back to let me get 3 miles down the road.
Yeah.
I just got to take one step in the right direction today and then
Yeah.
hold there. Okay. And then do it again tomorrow. And that's
Yeah.
where I came up with the 1% possible. You're a math guy, so I know you'll appreciate this. If you have 1% exponential growth for 365 days, at the end of the year, that's about 32% increase. Now it's hard to see the 1% negative because over the year, you're still within that 99th percentile.
Yeah.
But you do that enough times, and then that exponential curve drops really fast.
It does.
So, you're preaching to the choir.
Yeah. No, it's a big part of it. And the third thing is about this thing called forgiveness. Because I could forgive the guys at the party because this was Kevin's choice, right? It's his decision. And it was easy for me to forgive my kid because that's what we do. But there's one person that was pretty hard to forgive.
Is that yourself or God? Or both?
Both. But forgiving myself was a big part of that. And it took 1,400 miles and 5 pairs of shoes, but I heard a pastor describe it best once. He said that anger and vengeance are, I guess, just going to lead to one thing: destruction. Forgiveness leads to healing. And sometimes, maybe more than we think, the most important person you need to forgive is yourself. We all make mistakes, man. It's the way you handle it that matters.
I agree. I'm assuming that that was a gradual effort because it was probably the last thing you wanted to hear or admit to yourself. So when does that
Exactly.
pop up in the
Well,
mental foreground?
it was a process. There wasn't an exact day.
Okay.
Uh,
But I
it was
imagine that's
something.
not step one of 1,400 miles. I gotta
No,
forgive myself.
no, no, it's not. You know, it's interesting that quiet time. I used to live in Montana. Went hiking out. We were out in the middle of the Bob Marshall Wilderness with my uncle one time, and just dead quiet, right? And I turned to him and whispered, "Man, it's quiet out here." And his answer, I'll never forget. He said, "Yeah, and it's got a lot to say."
How old were you when you heard that?
Oh, it was actually after Kevin passed away.
Okay. Did you understand it right away?
I did, because that quiet time, uh, it isn't that I did have the something very good, but most of the time, the advice you get from God is not a booming voice.
I would agree. Unless
It's,
he's really got to get your attention.
which he had my attention,
Mhm.
but but a lot of us lack that quiet time. And when I say quiet time, I mean no music.
Right.
I mean nothing, because you have to let him do his thing. Let your mind just kind of try to let go of all that stuff. And it's hard to do.
Well, I'm curious, while you're walking and some of these things are coming to you, are you discussing with your wife on breaks or rest, each night or whatever the case may be?
No, I'm a guy.
That doesn't surprise me. Again,
uh,
was just curious
you know,
because clearly
that was
you
one
listen
of
to her. So how
oh,
quick?
I listened to her because she rode when I trained for marathons and that kind of stuff. She would ride her bike with me, and I used to wear headphones, but then after a while, I took them off and just let her talk to me. Right? She's got my undivided attention. She can talk to me about whatever she wants. I'm not going to look at my phone. I'm not going to look at anything
Right.
else. Just listen. Because that listening part is what's probably missing. And one of the other conclusions I've come to through the years is about this thing called grief.
Talk
Right?
about
Grief. Um, it sounds a little harsh what I'm about to say, but it's reality. What I wanted to do after he died was I wanted to feel the way I did before he died.
it. All right.
I
Can you
wanted to
explain?
feel that way again. Guess what? You're never going to feel that way again. The old you died with your child or your loved one. They're gone. You're gone too. There's a
That
new you.
version at least.
That version of you is gone.
Okay.
The new you is up to you. And we both know that that can go both ways when
Yep.
stuff like this happens. That's on you to decide what you're going to do.
How long did it take to come through that revelation and then accept it? Because those are two very different things.
It was, oh yeah, it had to have been probably 15 years before it really occurred to me to wrap my head around that. It's one thing to forgive yourself and all of those things, but to wrap your head around the fact that, yeah, the old me is gone. It took me quite a while to realize the Barry on July 9th of 2005 is gone. He ain't around anymore.
Mm. Which may not actually be a bad thing.
It isn't, but letting go of that,
But
because
it's
you do.
familiar. You felt
Yeah,
in control.
you want to feel that way again. And I don't think I'm alone in thinking that. You want to just, I want to go back and feel that way again, but it's never going to happen.
How did you make peace with that?
Time. It's, I know that the grief process never ends. There are still times to this day, I've told the story 400 or 500 times. There are times that I have trouble telling the story because something I say or whatever triggers something. It's still there. It's a scab that can be torn off and you don't know why.
Right.
You don't know why, but it gets torn off.
Yep.
And my new project has started tearing that scab off again because it's a very emotional thing for me.
Okay. Before we get into that, have we covered everything you wanted to cover on this 1,400-mile walkabout?
I think we have. Again, I look back on it, Caleb, and I'm shocked that it all worked in hindsight. It's kind of fun Bev and I reflect on it and people talk to me about it. And I look back on it, because I did the walk. So he died on July 10th of 2005. We did the walk in 2007. So it's a long ways in the rearview mirror, but I can't believe I pulled it off.
I understand. I understand that feeling all too well.
And with time, it gets more profound. With time, it really, you're like, huh, that worked. I mean, because I could have got hit by a car.
So that brings my next question, because I was thinking about this. Where are you walking?
I'm walking alongside the road facing traffic.
Okay.
2-lane roads. They would not let me walk on the freeway. None of the Department of Public Safety in Arizona and Utah. I didn't even try Idaho. They said, well, you can walk on the freeway, but if we tell you to get off, you got to get off.
Fair enough.
So we walked 2-lane roads. I walked against traffic. I did not wear headphones because I wanted to be able to hear. First of all, I wanted to be quiet and I wanted to be able to hear what was going on because I could see people coming at me and I could see, are they going to move over or not? And 99.9% of them were very gracious in what they did. The closest calls that I had were actually people passing other vehicles going the same way I am, because they would pull out to pass and not see me.
Right.
And there were some that were pretty close.
Wow.
And, you get to see every inch of the road that you drive and you don't really see much. And when you walk it, you see every piece of litter. When you walk out of a town, there's litter. The worst parts are right out of town. It's just covered in litter. When you get further out, it's all blown out of the back of people's trucks.
Right.
Not so much. But when close to town, there's litter everywhere.
That is a very interesting perspective shift. Just changing your level of awareness and then the speed at which you travel.
Yeah. Because you see everything. You get to look at the rocks. In northern Arizona, there's all those red rocks over by Canada and Utah and all of that. You get to you think a lot about geology, believe it or not. Wonder how that ended up like that. Oh, look, all those rocks fell down off of there.
Yes.
You see all of that.
That's very interesting. I remember feeling that way in many of my cycling journeys, and you're just like, I would have never noticed this before.
Yeah.
Because the windows are up, the music is blasting, and I'm going whatever speed because I'm en route to somewhere else and I'm focused.
Yeah. You don't see all that geology. You You stare at a mountain for 3 weeks wondering, am I
Right.
going over it or around it? That's one of my things was I look out there and go, huh, there's a pretty good sized hill up there. I wonder exactly what's going to happen when I get there. Because I crossed the Continental Divide 3 times. Well, 3 times? Yeah, I think I did because I went over at least twice.
Hmm.
And the last crossing was between Helena, Montana and Ovando. And, you'd think in June the weather would be pretty nice. Yeah, it was cold, and that was probably my coldest day the whole while.
Wow.
Was getting over that. Pretty good sized pass. I don't remember, it was 2,000 or 3,000 feet elevation gain. So it's a real hill. But it was cold and rainy and windy, and that drill. Getting comfortable, Caleb,
Being
when you're
uncomfortable.
doing this is the other thing, because you can kind of appreciate this. I hated windy days because if the wind's not blowing, I can dress appropriately.
Right.
It's a little warm. I take something off, gets cold, put on a hat, whatever. But when the wind's blowing, you never get comfortable.
Yep.
You're either hot or cold, and that makes the day a lot longer.
Long days, short weeks.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because it's cold. You've been there, right? When you did, there's days where, man, I just can't get comfortable here.
Yep. I actually, in a race, at least, it's easier to get into this mindset. But I want it to be as bad as possible. Because I
Really?
know I can get through this. But this may take other people out. So, and not like, oh God, I'm praying this is the worst thing ever. But if it's coming, I look forward to it because I know other people aren't mentally as strong or just have never been in that type of scenario. So if you've never been forced to be uncomfortable and choose to continue moving forward, it's like, well, when you see a warm car and a cup of coffee, and you're like, oh, I could wait this out a little bit. I'm like, I don't care. I'll throw on whatever I can, but we're on a clock. So
yeah, you were on a clock a lot more than I was. I just know that those cold days made hot showers feel so much better. That was my mindset was, man, just
what
give
you
me
did
that
to
hot
me is so
shower.
much more difficult because you already had, well, man, it's really easy to find an excuse when you're cold, wet, and miserable.
Yeah.
And then you go, I mean, I've already got a planned weather day. I
Yeah.
got a planned rest day.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
You have to, it wasn't all lilies and
no,
cookies or whatever. There were definitely days that I did not feel like going. I look out at the weather, you get up in the morning and look at the weather forecast, and sometimes they were right. Another time I looked out there, it's supposed to be clear, and then an hour later it's snowing and winds blowing, and oh my gosh. Gotta be
that
kidding
reminds
me.
me, we're in Kansas, and we get a tornado warning comes across everybody's phone, and I reach out to the race directors, and we're probably 4-ish, maybe about 5 days in. I'm just like, hey, what's the guidance here? And they said, proceed at your own risk. And I said, okay, understood. If we decide not to, what happens? They said, the clock is still running. And I was like, then I guess we're going.
I guess we're going.
And it was a watch, not a warning.
Right.
There had been no touchdowns, but the conditions were right. And we're in tornado country.
Yeah.
So
yeah, you got to learn to deal with uncomfortable. You're so right about that. Nobody's really asked me about that, but the big thing is learning to deal with not being comfortable. Whatever's hurting, the ingrown toenail, whatever it is, something's hurting, it's cold out. Because if you're comfortable, it goes by pretty fast.
right.
When you're in a groove, you're at that cardio level, you're just going, everything is fine. It's when it's cold or when your knee starts hurting and that's all you're thinking about. Oh, my knee hurts now.
Well,
Whatever.
and again, you did it as the kids would call it these days, raw dog, no
Raw dog.
headphones, no
Oh
no
yeah.
distractions. So that's normally when I feel the pain, and I'm not against pain. I want the pain to travel because if it stays in one spot, this might be an injury.
Yeah.
But in all reality, anything you're doing that's pushing this level of physical, there's going to be pain. I just accept it. But if it starts in my back and goes to my foot, it is what it is. It'll work itself out. So,
Yeah.
but when it's bad, I turn up the music, or I throw on army cadences, take my mind back to, hey, I'm just going to zone out. I'm going to follow instructions. I don't have to think. I just have to follow.
I just remind myself why I'm out here.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing, is just to remind yourself, you ain't doing this just for the heck of it. You got a reason to be out here. Suck it up, Buttercup.
Before, the last question here. I'm curious, what did you find? I'm sure you had a lot of interactions. How long was this journey in terms of days?
It was about 4 months.
Okay, so wow. Was there any, whether it was speech or a passerby going, what are you doing? Did you have any interactions that stood out that, man, that was impactful either to me or you to them? Like, hey, I'm sure you probably lost count how many times you told this story in 4 months.
Yeah, I did. But every single day, people would stop to answer your question. Every single day, people would stop and ask me if I needed a ride and ask me what I'm doing out there. If it was raining, almost every car that went by would stop and say, hey,
Right.
jump in. But probably there was a lot of really cool interactions. The one that stands out the most was north of Flagstaff. I had spoke at Flagstaff High School.
Okay.
Car goes by, I see the brake lights go on. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna take a break and talk to this dude. And he gets out and introduces himself, and he was an officer, Flagstaff police officer. And he said, did you speak at the high school back in Flagstaff here a couple days ago? And I said, I did. And he gave me a hug and thanked me because for the first time, his son came home and told him about what happened at school. Yeah. The rest of the day was a pretty easy walk. It's like,
I mean,
okay.
you might have saved that father from going through the same thing. You never know.
Yeah, you never know. Yeah, there's been letters of things, people have said a lot of things, but I remember that because it was a pretty easy day after that,
And imagine.
right? Because you're just
And
like
you're already what 200-300 miles into
a
the
couple
journey.
hundred miles into it, probably.
Right. So how long are the speeches? Because I imagine standing up, it's not the most comfortable thing to do either.
They ran back then, they were probably close to 40 minutes. I'm down around 25 or 30 minutes. But I didn't have any time to change. I didn't
Right.
have a phone that could tell me how long it's going to take to get to that place. So it was, looking at a map and going, it's going to take about an hour to get there.
And were you walking to each location along the way?
No, we stopped. We marked the spot because sometimes it was in the middle of the day or something. I'd walk a little bit, mark the spot, go talk, then come back and walk again.
Okay. Wow.
And we kept really close track of this. Bev, my wife, there were bridges that didn't have any shoulders on them.
Right.
And she would say, well, why don't I drive you to the other side of that bridge? And then you can just walk back and forth over there and make up the distance.
Right.
And I said, no, I'm going to go for it. So I would wait until it looked like the coast was clear.
Okay.
And I ran across the bridge because I didn't want to get into this business of, well, I did something like that.
Right.
Right.
Wow. This is already extremely impactful. but I can imagine what you're doing next potentially has even a deeper impact. So let's get into that.
Yeah. So I get asked on a regular basis, what's next for you? What's going on with you? And I really have a healthy dislike for that question
Oh,
because,
me too.
yeah, because
This wasn't enough.
walking to Montana and writing a book wasn't enough and telling the story, And again, I think it was a God thing. I really was kind of done. I didn't really, doing something like this makes you pretty averse to committing to projects
At least of this scale.
of this scale. But it occurred to me, maybe it's not about me. Maybe we set up so everybody else can do the same dang thing I did.
Okay.
So it's going to be called the Million Mile Challenge. And
Okay.
the idea is that you're going to freely define how far you want to walk, how long it's going to take you. You're going to give us a picture and a story because everybody wants to know why. And we're going to log all those miles, and together, let's see if we can get to 1,000,000 miles.
Now, where can people find that information if they want to participate?
The website isn't up yet, but it
Okay.
will be millionmilechallenge.net.
Okay. You have an approximate time when that will be?
I'm guessing it's going to be the middle of April. There's
Okay.
a lot of things. This isn't just a vanilla website, right? Because we have to be able to have them log in and
Right.
record
Track,
their miles. We have
accept
to be able to keep.
donations.
Yeah, so that's the other thing. I'm not going to take donations.
Okay.
I'm going to have nonprofits that I think are worthy nonprofits there. We're going to have to charge a little bit to sign up. But as I keep telling my bride, who's my financial person, my goal is to not lose money on this. I'm not looking to make money on it, but I don't want to lose money on it. But I
Right.
just want to get people talking about this. Because everybody's got a story. Everybody knows someone who's
Yeah.
either an addict or a recovering addict, or they lost their life to it. Any one of those is an acceptable option. Now, this is just going to be walking or running only. Maybe they'll turn into a bike one
Okay.
someday, but we're going to start with this. What it's going to turn into down the road,
We'll let God handle that, right?
well, yeah, let that be a problem that we get to 1,000,000 miles and nobody knows what to do next. We'll deal with it.
Before I finish this up, you mentioned you wrote a book.
Yeah.
People are interested. Where can they find that? And I always like to say I'm not a good reader. Do you have an Audible version?
The Audible version isn't there. The Kindle, but you might be able to get the Kindle to read to you.
Okay.
I would imagine you could.
What is the
It's on
name of your book?
Amazon. It's Kevin's Last Walk. If you just type in my name, Barry Adkins, it'll come up at the top.
Okay. And Kevin's Last Walk.
And Kevin's Last Walk. And by the way, writing a book was harder than walking to Montana.
Why do you think that was?
Well, walking to Montana, you get up every morning, you know what you're going to do.
Okay.
Writing a book uses a part of my brain that doesn't get accessed very much. And I didn't want to do it. Actually, it was a buddy of mine. I have people call me out, Caleb, and it's happened a few times. I had kept a blog because that's all we did back then was a blog. And I called a buddy of mine up and said, "Hey, I'm going to print out the blog and put it in a 3-ring binder. You want a copy of it?" And he said, "No." I'm like, "Okay, why not?" He said, "Because you're going to write a book." And I said, "No, I'm not." A couple years later, there I am writing a book. And, just people call you out. A finishing story, which actually is the story. I had a guy years ago tell me, it was a young guy that also did the public speaking. He said, "You still don't speak at high schools, do you?" And I said, "I do." And he said, "You should stop doing that. You're too old." And I was that was my response. I was kind of offended by that.
Okay. Yeah.
But later, and again, I think it was a God thing, I thought, maybe I should address that right up front. So the first thing I tell everybody is, I'm just here to tell you a story. I'm not here to tell you how to live your life. Just relax. I'm just here to tell you a story. And as you listen to the story, think about what you want your story to be.
Pretty impactful in itself.
Yeah, the principal, I've had a couple of principals say that's the most important thing you said.
I would agree. Wow. Okay, so I finish every interview with this. You've obviously done plenty of speaking. You've written a book. You're at the end of your life and all that is taken away. What is the one thing, or multiple, if you have multiple, that you think is the most important for somebody listening?
Out of what I did?
Out of what your life and your wisdom, whatever that is.
You know, for me, it's to be obedient.
Okay, what do you mean?
Obedient to God, because He's got a bigger plan for you than you can ever possibly imagine.
Would agree.
But you have to be obedient. You have to listen and decide what you're going to do. But He's there. He went from the theoretical to the real for me. Be obedient to Him. He will guide you, but you got to listen to what He's got to say.
I don't normally go back into the interview, but I'm just curious. Did you have any more spiritual type encounters during the walk? Angel, random passerby that you thought was homeless that ended up being Jesus for you in that moment?
No. There were a lot of great people who did. There's a lot of people that I don't doubt were angels that just stopped and talked to me. Right? Kind of encouraged me a little bit. That happened every day. People would stop and talk, and nothing specific there, but I think it was a combination of keeping me going, right? Because when somebody stops, they're like, "Oh, wow, this is great," blah blah blah.
Right.
And it helped you. It had helped me along the way.
Okay. All right, my final question for you, Barry. If I could interview anybody that you have a connection with, who would that be and why? Whether it's one or three or five people.
I would have to think about that. There was a couple guys that I actually talked to before I did the walk that I don't even know if they're around anymore. One of them was called Fat Man Walking.
Okay. I haven't heard of them, but I'm curious.
He kind of gave me coaching about getting a camera and that kind of stuff. And there's another guy right after 9/11 who rode his bike from Arizona to Ground Zero.
Wow.
His name was Ray. I can't think of his last. I'll have to see if I can find him and see if he's still around, because that Ray is the guy who said, "How do you think you'd feel about it in 10 years if you don't do it?"
Thank you, Ray.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
There's a lot of great stories out there. You got to get, there is, it just is.
Everything I do here, and I try to in my life, I've learned I'm here to be authentic. So I'm not doing this to get paid and be famous.
Yeah.
I think that, as you said, we've got enough victims in the world. And I'd rather share stories of positivity and overcoming and realize, to me, you guys are everyday heroes. We aggrandize and borderline worship different people in our society. And maybe they don't really actually have the greatest of characteristics, but that's what the world, if you will, pushes down our throats. How about we look at the people every day around us, the unassuming, and go, hey, you never know, one, what this person's going through, but two, hey, they may have a lot more mental fortitude than any professional athlete or politician.
Yeah.
So,
And people see through authenticity. I'll leave you with this, especially students and kids and
mhm,
even adults. If you get up there and start talking and you're not being real,
yeah,
they sniff it out pretty fast.
I
Don't get
agree.
up there
And
and
then
say
you
a bunch of
immediately lose
stuff.
them.
Yeah, you lose them. Yeah, that's an important part of it. Just stick to your roots.
Sir, I appreciate your time.
Yeah,
I'm going to finish up the interview here. And I look forward to hopefully talking with either one of these gentlemen.
yeah. I'll think
So,
about it more. There's got to be more. I've met a lot of people through all of this, that have faced uh, adversity and done stuff with it.
I'm going to add that to my line. The only things guaranteed in life in life are death and taxes. And I'm going to add adversity as well.
Actually, my grandson has that. My grandson is in the Marines.
Huh?
That part about it, the way you respond to adversity will define your life, is tattooed on his arm.
Whew.
Yeah,
Well, as a veteran and a lover of service members, I thank your grandson for his service.
yeah. I thank you for yours too. Yes.
And in a society that does not appreciate what I would consider men and fathers being allowed to do that, I thank you for that. We have a true epidemic of anything, if you will. It's fatherlessness.
Yeah,
And I thank you for holding the line.
it's
So,
important. You bet. Well,
well,
thanks for
sir.
having me on, Caleb.
Yes, sir. I appreciate you. You have a great day.
You
And
too.
I salute you.
Thank you.